2024 at 6 o'clock. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Niles.
Here.
White.
Here.
Stigler.
Here.
Gurecki.
Here.
Buckles.
Here. Open meeting law compliance check. The agenda was posted on the 3 village public notice boards, the village website, and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws on or before 6 p.m. on Wednesday, March 6th, 2024. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, discussion items. All items listed are up for discussion, consideration, deliberation, and possible formal action. We kind of put these, John, I'll be honest, John and I kind of put this together this week, talking about why we're not getting anywhere with these proposals. So we listed them all here. Obviously, if we want to, we're going to pick one. Option A, proposal for a new village fire station and to remodel existing village fire station as DPW building. This option will include all necessary electrical upgrades. Then we define scope of work for buildings and request proposals from firms.
So the vision was, you would decide, if 3 people, 3 or more, decide on an option, we're not going through the rest of the options, okay?
Right.
So we started with the one that was probably the most inclusive, or for lack of better phraseology, and I'm not picking that one over any of them. If 3 people say, yes, we want to at least at this point study option A, and go out and put a scope of work together and ask firms to come in with proposals for putting together the bids, you know, and things. That's all you're gonna do, is no one's even asking for motions necessarily tonight. But just to get the sense of the body on which of the options the majority of the board feels to go with. And we only talk about 1 and 2 under the option if that's the option that 3 or more people have chosen, okay? So the goal was not to pick, let's pick option A and C. No, you pick a option. Does that make sense? Now you can have other options. That's what E was supposed to, you got a double D there, but you know, that D would be a hybrid. But we tried to put together, Bob did, all the ones that you've talked about, okay? And he has to run through them quickly. One is the new fire station and remodel the existing fire station as a DPW. And when we talk about the scope then, if you chose that one, you would talk about whether you want dorms in the new fire station or in the old fire station, or I'm sorry, wrong example to give. The next one is no new fire station, but remodel the existing fire station with sleeping quarters, okay? And, you know, a new DPW building. We tried to think if you chose the new fire station and remodeling the existing, you wouldn't need a new DPW building theoretically if you're gonna remodel the old one. Does that make sense? So the next one would say no new fire station, but we gotta remodel the existing fire station and build a new DPW building. The next one is no new fire station, not to remodel the existing fire station, but build a new DPW. That's the one who says fire station is for later, DPW, it has to be done now, okay? Which many have, I know Bob, I don't wanna speak for him, you've said that many times, we gotta make sure we do a DPW. So that's not to say you're never gonna do a fire station, that's tonight. Moving these projects forward, this is the option we choose to go with, okay? It's not written in stone, it's not that it can't be changed later, it's to give direction to move these projects, and I say projects. And the reason I was so anal and Bob was so anal about putting includes the electrical upgrade is we're not here to talk about the generator. The generators, everybody knows you gotta do a generator. You've been talking a generator for longer than I've been here, okay? And so generator was included. When we talk about electrical upgrades, that's the generator and whatever else electrical has to be done to make the generator work and, you know, and things like that. So that's why it's included with every option, okay? On the campus. The next one was, and Bob asked me to go through them, no new village station, don't remodel the old station, no DPW, and that one, is only the electrical upgrades. No, I'm sorry, three was, C was new DPW, with the electrical upgrades. And then the fourth one was, and maybe that's where it was, D, no new fire station, no remodel, no DPW, and just the generator and upgrades.
Yep.
So
That's
those are
basically
the
what we've
options.
been doing so far, so I guess, yeah, go ahead, John. sorry.
First thing, did we miss any? If you wanted to add to the list, if you had one that you thought, we tried to be all inclusive. And we didn't hierarchy, it's just, the one is everything and the last one is just the electric. And all you're trying to do tonight is get consensus that this is the one you wanna move forward with. If you're gonna move forward with that one, then we have to decide what the scope of the project is. And then we have to send that scope to a series of different firms to get proposals, and those proposals, the firm wouldn't do the work yet. They would be giving you a free proposal for you to interview them to see if you want to give them the work. So technically, just so it's clear to everybody, nobody's spending any money tonight. All right? There's no commitment to spend the money. There's only a consensus of where you 5 people are at. Is that helpful?
They're not on it.
Just talk loud.
Just talk loud, exactly.
I just had a quick question on the DDW building. Does that include the salt, like salt storage building and all, is that included in that? If we
Not at
scope
this
that?
point, it's
Yeah,
not, but
that would be
you
in-
could put it in one of them, I'm sure.
Read,
A salt shed?
Yeah.
read
Okay,
option
no,
B.
the item, what was contemplated when we put this together was a building to store the trucks. A building to store the trucks, that's a great question, but when it talks about define the scope of the work of the buildings, if you would choose the option that's just DPW, you could say, I want to include a salt shed with that proposal. You could include that with anyone, but I'll tell you, to be honest, all Bob talked about at the staff meeting was the potentiality of a building to put the trucks in. Okay? And the staff is here to help us, once the option is chosen, then they'll be called upon to help define the scope of the work for the buildings, okay? And we appreciate you to be here, but that's what they're here for, not to help you decide which of the options you wanna go with. I'm sure they have strong feelings, but, that's your choice. Not theirs, not Chris, not mine, your choice, where the 5 of you are at, or which of these options. Does anybody wanna start?
Should we start at the end and go around the table here? I think it's probably the easiest way to do it.
Looking for volunteers, but.
Sure. Well, I just volunteered somebody, so.
Well, I think if I remember correctly, I made the motion to start the last round of, blueprints that we got. But just thinking through a lot more of this and, seeing what they misjudged the price of just the electrical options for the company that we hired to start this project with. If they say 7 million, I think realistically, if we went with them, they're talking 10+ million, and that's just way the hell too much money for what we're trying to do here. Personally, looking at the way you laid out the options, I appreciate that you did that. I guess, cause this is actually what I was coming in here thinking, like we need to have something other than just straight up, just the fire department being built the way we've discussed it, and personally, I think we have to do something for the sleeping quarters. I fully am on board with all of that part. I'm not convinced at this point, in this moment in my life right now, of all the things we've been thinking about with this, that, building the fire station is the exact answer. I'm leaning more towards B myself. That we need to do something with the DPW. There's no doubt that we can't keep leaving our trucks outside because we're wrecking our vehicles. And for what, $300,000, whatever it is now per truck, we're wasting the taxpayers' money of the village, leaving them sitting outside and rotting. So we have to do something about that. Being in the profession that I've been for the last 22+ years now, I've made comments before, I think at the last one of these meetings, and And our village has always been one, that has a slow response to things, and, from the fire department's perspective, and to the point, I've been in the ambulance doing CPR on the way to the hospital to the person instead of the firefighters doing it. So I think we need to do something on that part. And to the attorney's point, as far as the upgrades go, it was kind of a sticker shock when it came back with all those, that's why we held off on that as well, but, it makes sense that we do everything all at once that way, in my opinion, so I guess personally, I'd say option B is where I'm leaning towards at this point.
Okay, Al?
Well, I'm kinda echoing a little bit with you with Chad here, but we have sleeping quarters, obviously response times would obviously be a lot better than we have today. It'd be nice to have. And the PTW building, I guess, all the trucks sitting outside and just sitting there rusting, and they should be inside, and we're wasting a lot of time just going, getting salt, coming back, and then emptying out the loads, and not doing anything with the trucks, and they're just taking a beating out there, not being indoors. Bottom line, I mean, if I had a new truck and the salt is like cancer on it, it's like the worst thing you can put on a vehicle is that salt. And our trucks sitting out there, and I think it's a waste of our money here at the town, letting their trucks sit out there and get damaged out there where they could be inside, and the valuable time of making them last 2, 5, 10 more years longer than what they're gonna be sitting out there now. I just can't believe we need to get them inside, for the DPW building for sure, and it'd be nice to get a salt shed, cause they spend X amount of hours just going out to getting a load and bringing it back, and they didn't do anything here. I think we'd save a lot of time just getting a salt shed here, and speed things up, and if we get a storm that comes in, and so they don't have to plan, hey, I could go out there for an hour and plan the storm when it coming in, they could have the salt here, and they wouldn't have to be wasting a lot of their time, and our money. So, there's a lot of options. Obviously, we only got so much money to do. I'm definitely in for a new DPW building for sure, and I wouldn't mind getting sleeping quarters here too. So, if that's a hybrid option or not, but, and I'd like to get a new fire station, but we can't have everything. I can't say how we can make everything work, to get this all done, and so. I'm gonna go option B too.
Real quick, can I ask, Jerry, what, if we had a building that these trucks would be stored in, would you keep salt in them? Like the day before, if we know there's a storm coming tomorrow, would you go load up like today to have it ready?
Yeah, they'd be all.
You're not gonna leave it loaded up all winter,
Right.
waiting for the next storm to come, but I guess to your point though, if we had a building to put them in, you could get loaded up today for tomorrow's storm, so that.
Well, and it saves us time too, because a lot of times, in a 24-hour storm, we go out more than once. So when we come back, we gotta dump those trucks off, cause they'll freeze up.
Right.
Whereas we could just back them in the garage, have them loaded, come back in 4 hours and hit the road again. So it'd save us a lot of time and grief.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm gonna go, be honest with you, I've been option B from the start. I mean, years ago already, that was kind of the plan here, and I'm still leaning towards that. When I took over this job, my big goal and my mission, so to speak, if you wanna call it that, was the DPW building, because of the reasons that Al had here about trucks sitting outside. And Jerry just came up with a good one, having the idea that they can put them inside and come back 4 hours later and have to go back out again. So the DPW building to me is a priority. The fire department, with the response time, I think we put an addition on, the existing one's still gonna be cheaper than building a new one, as we've had with this option one, and the price that we had so far as Chad has stated, that the price is probably gonna be a lot higher than what we originally started out to be.
And thinking through that too, I think just the estimates of what they're initially claiming for what they gave us in the first draft, jack that price up clearly by at least $1 million or $2 million. On top of that, then if we're gonna look at remodeling this building, add on probably $1 million by the time we do whatever we gotta do to this building, so that's why I said, I think if we end up doing that, even if estimates are 7-8 million for the other building, it's gonna be a $10 million project all said and done.
Yep.
And we still haven't talked about roads or the rest of the stuff that we can do too, so that's why I just don't know at this point that we can afford to do A being a pipe dream, right, but I just don't know that we can do that.
But the problem is, we haven't done anything here for 10 years, you know, this is all
You know,
been
every
sitting
time
and
we talk
festering.
about it, we wait, that just means we're adding another million on.
Yeah, we could have done this 7, 8 years
ago.
ago for a whole lot less money than we're talking today, obviously,
Yeah.
so. And I'm sure we, in another 10 years, we're gonna be
Double that again.
priced out of the market again. So we need to do something, and I guess, I've always said option B was kind of my idea, if we had to do something with the fire station, that made more sense to me than, you know, building a complete new one. I know the guys would like to have that, everybody wants everything brand spanking new and nice and shiny, but we gotta go within our budget as much as we can afford without breaking the bank. So from my point, I'm on option B. Mike?
Yeah, a lot of good points tonight. We spent a lot of time on this, to your point, Bob. What got all of this started was when you and I think Mike Durr were talking about building a pole barn for the DPW equipment. The truth is, we don't have money for option D. We don't have money for any of this. And in order to finance it, taxes are going up, we're gonna have to borrow money in order to do that. The feedback that I've received from residents is very clear to keep taxes low. And I understand sometimes you cut a little too close to the bone. Reading the recent fire department report, it was interesting to see that the city of Waukesha needed our help. We've rendered mutual aid to them many times. And if you look at the taxes, the equipment, the number of fire stations, the sleeping, the on-site person, the fire resources that the city has, they still need our help sometimes. I guess my point is, there's a curve, you know, the amount of money that you spend and response time, and based on what I've heard from residents, we're at a level that's acceptable to them to keep the community low tax. I understand that no matter what, you know, some people aren't gonna be happy, but I had one resident who's been here for generations with his family say, and this was his comment to me, he said, Mike, we get it here. In this community, we have low taxes and higher fire insurance costs. That was his cost, that was his comment. And I've heard a lot of similar remarks. So I was surprised the last time we had a workshop like this, where we were simply presented with plans for a fire station that, in my opinion, was excessive. And what I came away from that missing was a clear need for a new fire station. To make a long story short, we already have 3 people that have chosen option B. I acknowledge the need to house the plows and that other equipment so it doesn't rust away, so mice don't chew into the wiring, so it's ready when we need it. I'm not convinced that we need a salt storage shed. There was a rumor going around about how the county was going to do away with their salt sharing program. And I made one call to the county about that, and that rumor was dispelled. So there's no talk of that. So for that reason, I'm gonna put my voice in for option C. So no new fire station, no remodel of the fire station. However, a new DPW building to house that equipment.
Okay, Stu?
Well, I think I kinda suggested A to begin with. To me, for the longevity of the town or village we are now, I thought it was a good option to build a new fire station. It doesn't have to be the Taj Mahal like the prints that you said we had. I agree with that. It can be revised. I think we need to bring the fire department up to the 21st century or the 22nd century, sorry. But I was under the feeling that if we built a new fire station, the DPW could move into this building. I don't think it would have to be remodeled or anything, there's plenty of garage door space, there's plenty of garage space. You've got meeting rooms, you've got a workshop, you're still gonna have the buildings out here and back for, you know, other stuff you're gonna do. I know it's been kicked around for years about doing something with an addition, and like you say, the prices are going up every year. And it's gonna cost probably 3 times as much now as it did, 4 or 5 years ago when it was proposed to put sleeping quarters into this building. This building's been added on to 3 times already, and it just gets more and more expensive every time. My feeling is to go with letter A. I think you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Yes, it's gonna be a little more expensive in the long run. I'm sick of hearing low taxes. I agree that we should keep taxes low, but I think they've been too low for over years. And we're in a hard place right now, and we gotta try and dig ourselves out. If boards before us would have done their due diligence and kept the taxes at a reasonable rate, I think we wouldn't be in this predicament. I'm gonna go with option A.
So unless there's further discussion, and we certainly can continue, no one's trying to cut off discussion, the majority, 3 are still on option B. And the guideline tonight was to move ahead with the one that a majority were willing to do. So, does anybody wanna, based on the arguments, made for 1 and 3, anybody on the B option of a mind to change their choice at the moment? Again, I'm not trying to cut off debate, but we gotta move this forward.
I just add, so if you're looking at option B or option A, we're talking about sleeping quarters. There are a lot of costs that are gonna go up significantly with that. So it's not just the structure itself. Now you need to staff it. Now you have equipment that needs to be added, equipment that needs to be repaired, maintained. My opinion is that those options, that's the camel sticking its nose underneath the tent.
Mr. President?
Yeah.
Would it be wise just to listen to the chief talk, see what he expects, what he thinks would need him better to make this village something better, or something that could do it better, that maybe he has something that we ain't thinking about? Even Jerry, I wouldn't mind him speaking to the DPW guy and see what their thoughts are and see where they're at.
Well, you certainly can do that, but you've had those discussions before, and you may not have been here, you know, cause I'm gonna tell you, if you're gonna open it up to the public too, are you gonna, what's the game plan here if you're gonna start taking comments? I mean, I'm not
No,
trying to
the
cut
game
off.
plan is the board and staff, which would be Jerry and Andy. Their opinions count. When we discuss options and get information, this is what we're doing, is getting information from staff, so that's where I wanna keep it. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you want,
Well, I just thought it might be something that we missed. I've
all right, Andy,
only
you
been
wanna,
up here
you
for a
wanna
couple
address
of months,
this?
so.
Sounds like they wanna get input from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've talked about for years. So I think both options are viable. I mean, we've looked at it, additions, and we looked at the new station, you know, we're looking to attack both needs. I mean, I know Mike is saying he doesn't think we need sleeping quarters, but I mean, we've talked about the response times and how the nighttime is that much larger, versus the daytime when they're staffed. You know, yes, they're depending on how we wanna staff the night stuff, there could be increased options, or it also just allows us the opportunity to have more recruitment availability, because right now we can't recruit anyone from outside the area. And there's plenty of people in Milwaukee County that are looking for part-time jobs that we can't, you know, pull from that pool. So we're only looking at limited staff from Waukesha. You know, we've got a few people out of the area, but they can only work during the day. So then, when we get short at night, they're useless. So that's one of the other aspects of the sleeping quarters. When we looked at the addition the first time, we looked at we were planning to also extend, one or two of the bays, because we were originally talking on the, northeast corner. And so that would allow us, because with the engine right now, if we were, it's an older engine, a lot of the newer equipment is getting bigger because more equipment has to be put onto it. And that engine's coming up on 23 years old, 24 years old. When we go to replace it, it may not fit in that bay. So extending one or two of the bays as well allows us that growth for the bigger equipment if we do the addition. That was all encompassed in the new station as well. Alice, do you have any other specific questions? Because
Well, I think
we talked about
the
it so many
game
other
plan,
times.
game plan was to decide the option, and then once the option, you're gonna be invited to the table to
Right.
tell about what the specs of that option should be. So right now, we're not into adding on to the station or rooms or stuff, we're on new fire station versus remodel. That's really, I wanna try to segregate to that issue, because boy, I think they're gonna want you at the table telling all the things that we should put in the list of things once that option is done,
Right.
okay? So the question is, do you have any other comments about option A versus option B versus option C? And you've made your comments, I'm not saying you have to have any more, but there is more questions, I got a dozen questions I'm gonna ask once they decide the option.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna ask you to sit down and tell us everything you think needs to be, done if they build or they remodel.
I think one of the main reasons we even started looking at just building a new station was because for future growth, now that we're the village and everything, I think that's one thing that's turned away from the addition to the station is we're building a station that's gonna be here for 50, 60 years. So it was gonna allow for that additional growth instead of, like Stu said, adding on to the building once again. So I guess that was kind of the difference between the station and the addition from our perspective. We can make both work from our standpoint, because our biggest thing is we want to provide the best services we can, and a lot of that is to get, people their emergency services in a timely fashion.
Well, I guess to that point, then, like, talking about additional bays and things like that could be considered part of remodeling then. So you can make an argument at that point if we need to add another bay, or to your point earlier about extending some of them out to make them larger.
Well, trustee, that's what number one is, once you decide your option, we're gonna spend time making a decision tonight, or not a decision, but a guide tonight as to what the extent of the scope of the project should be.
Yep.
And that's what I said, we're gonna ask them to sit down and we're gonna Chris and I are gonna write down everything, and then you're gonna decide, yes, that's in or that's out. Extending the bay, the dorms, all of that can be considered. But let's decide on A, B, C, D, or E first. Chief, is there anything else? I think that was very helpful.
No, I think that's what I have. It's
Okay.
Jerry's turn now.
And you wanna hear from Jerry?
You got any questions?
No, I think we pretty much know what your plan is for.
Well, with any of the options we talked about, they include building, so.
Yeah,
I'm pretty good with that.
I think that's been the consensus from the beginning, is the DPW building was all part of this from day one, was the reason we started all this, was that DPW building. So, anybody else got any change of heart or questions, comments?
Okay, so 3 people have decided to go with option B, if I'm understanding that correctly, and under option B, we have to define the scope of the work of the 2 buildings. There's no new fire station, we're gonna remodel the existing fire station with sleeping quarters and with other modifications, I put it right on there, chief, and, the new DPW. Which do you wanna start with, Jerry or the chief, to work on defining the scope of the work for the building? And it's not locked in stone, this is just so we can go to the firms and say, this is what we're thinking of, come back with a proposal of what it's gonna cost to have use, we're gonna tell them they gotta do this for nothing. Put together a proposal.
So I'd make the suggestion that we should start with the DPW building. That'll probably be the easier of the two.
Well, I think we have to do both eventually anyway. I mean,
We
I
gotta do-
would agree with that, Mike. I guess my only hesitation on how far we get into that is we got B, that's gonna be the next section, and I mean, if we're gonna be scoping this out, then we need to know what we're doing on the snow removal side, because that's either for a couple of trucks or it's for a dozen trucks, you're like, cause we're not gonna do to that project the same thing we done with the fire department, we're gonna add on to it in 3 years to add on 4 more stalls.
Well, let's hear what Jerry has to say. That's a great point, trustee. Jerry, you wanna turn the chair around and face us, and unless you like to stand, you can sit if you
No,
prefer.
that's okay. We've been going through
That's
this
not on,
for-
Jerry, you can just talk.
It's, yeah, we're not.
None of the
on-
microphones are on.
You
Anyhow,
gotta talk loud, Jerry.
we've been going through this for 10, 12 years now, and I think I've already expressed our needs at that point. But there is also an additional need if we decide to go in-house, for our snow removal. And like Chad was saying, that could make a big difference on the size of the building, which I'm not an architect, I would need help somebody doing that. We'd have to add some trucks.
How many trucks, or like, how many stalls?
Right now,
do
we
you
have,
need?
I've got a list in front of you guys of what we have now and what we're doing and what our contractor is doing. That should simplify it for you. And I also on a list have added what we need if we were to take it all in-house. And so we probably have to be at a minimum of 3 single axle trucks. Used, new they're about 250,000. We probably need at least 3 more cleanup trucks. We have a contractor that does 3 of our routes now. They're running 4 single axles, a wing loader, and probably 4 1-tons of salters, 1,000 salters on them to get that part of the village done in a timely manner. We're doing 3 routes, we're doing them with 4 single axle trucks and 1 550, and we have 1 truck as a spare. So we would probably need 3 new, used, newer, better trucks to handle that, plus what I told you, it's all right in front of you there. Plus personnel would be an issue.
So, if I may, Jerry, to continue doing what we do now,
Correct.
how many, I'll use the word bays, no, I have that, is that,
Probably gonna be 4, right? You say he's got 3 routes plus a spare?
Well, right now I've got 5 single axle snowplow trucks equipped with wings. I can get 2 in the garage. Okay, so everything else sits outside. Now they're your brand new 21 550 sitting out there. Your pickup, all your other equipment sitting outside, but I can only get 2 little 50.
so the minimum you would need to house would be 5, is that what you're telling
No,
us?
I'm gonna need to, well, I can get 2 in there, so if I added another 3 trucks, yeah, I would need another 5 additional.
No, we're not adding, I'm saying if you were gonna continue, if they make the decision that we're gonna have to always need, you know, cause of manpower and cost of trucks and availability of trucks, at least for the relatively near future, they're gonna keep the status quo of service. I'm not saying that's the decision. This
My
is the
recommendation-
minimum storage building you need would house how many trucks?
My recommendation is all the single axle plow trucks go in that building.
And if we did our
It'll
own
be a total
plowing,
of 8,
if we did all our own plowing.
if we did all our own plowing. So
My question was the opposite.
Minimum of
Like,
8.
right, Jerry, so like right now, if I built you a garage to house what you have right now, how big does that garage need to be?
Square footage, I can't.
No, stalls, how many stalls do you need right now?
Oh, I would need, okay, 2 and 1, 2, 3, probably 5 stalls.
Right now to house what's
Just
all outside?
bare minimum, okay.
So 5 to keep us going like we are today, and then you're saying 8 if we were to add on the other
Right,
routes and
right,
no longer
right.
contract.
Cause you have 7 today, is that how many you have today?
I have 5 now, but if we're
But
gonna.
2 of them already go in.
the two are gonna go in, but I've got my one, single axle, or not my single axle, but my 550 is sitting outside. The pickup is not in the garage, everything else is outside.
Well, I guess that's what we're kinda asking, is if, what do you need to put the pickup inside, the 550 inside, and all the snowplow trucks that we have now, what would you need there?
Well, I can get two of those trucks in there currently, right now, okay? Barely
I
get it.
get that, but.
So you don't really have 5 that you're trying to house, you have 7 that you're trying to house, because you have 5 trucks,
Okay.
plus the pickup truck, plus you called another one.
So bare minimum, say we're gonna stay here with the contractor, I'm gonna get 3 more trucks in there, single axle trucks, plus our 550.
You
I
have
said
other-
Plus your pickup.
Before this, you had the 550 in the garage you have now.
Yeah, it's not in there now.
I know that, Jerry, but let's just say we go back to what you were doing before.
Yeah,
You had the 550 in there, what else?
and I got the new plow truck that I drive is in there.
And that filled up that little,
That's in there, and
So-
and the end loader.
yeah, so in other words, then, what you would need then is the number for these other, for our plow trucks, for the wing trucks.
Correct.
I'm not sure we don't have it right when you say 5 to keep going as is, because you have 5 trucks plus you have this other equipment that you'd like to get
Correct.
inside.
But I just don't wanna get into the same predicament you did 10 years ago, where you got 4 trucks, you threw a box around them, you put up a building that wasn't big enough right out of the gate. We are potentially gonna take on our own snow removal at some point, like Stu said. We won't.
I envision going to the well, they're gonna make that decision later on, but I envision potentially going to the firms and saying, at a minimum, we need to house 5 additional single axle plow trucks in a building.
Okay,
And a maximum, we need to do 8, or whatever number you give us. I think you said 8. So the minimum building that you want spec'd out and potentially put out to bid is 5, and the maximum is 8.
okay.
Is that, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm trying to
Right.
summarize what I'm hearing.
Okay.
And they'll make the decision what they want to spec out with these firms. They can do both, they can do 5, they can do 8, or they can do both. And it may not be decided until the end of the night when they talk about in-house or, continuing a contract. Fair enough?
Right, and like I say, if we did have to do it, okay, the 8, that'll work, okay, that's without a spare.
Well, if the number's 9, tell us it's
Let's
9.
go, I'm gonna say 9.
Yeah,
It's
you-
called-
we
it's
just
called
said
nine.
before, though, let's not shortchange it
Right.
and build something that's gonna be
We
out
gotta
there
have a
the
spare
first day
truck.
the doors open on it,
That's just for this part of it.
Okay.
And if we do either option, the 5 or the 9, does that get all equipment inside, or is there still stuff outside besides?
No,
trucks?
because we have existing buildings, we'll be able to get that in our existing buildings.
Might not be able to keep them. I mean, if you need a building for 9 plows, the blade on those is how wide? 12 feet, plus space in between bay doors and everything. I mean, that's a very long building.
Okay, but that's an excellent point. Part of the specs, if Chris taking notes, is anticipate we're keeping all of the existing buildings. I mean, it can be part of this, so they gotta look to the park or wherever to put this building, that's what we're gonna do, is put the minimum criteria by which they're going to put together a plan,
Yeah, our existing buildings will be cold storage, as for our summer stuff, our tractors for mowing roadsides, brush cutters, wood chipper, we house the squad car in one of our buildings back there, so that's what they were looking for.
Okay, now you've entered another era, which is great, it's a great segue. This has to be a heated building.
Correct.
Okay, they need to know that. What else do they need to know about this building, at the minimum?
It has to have drainage.
Okay. You have to be able to wash the trucks?
Correct, and I don't know what any kind of specs are, because they're salt, is there any kind of a brine tank you have to have in the floor, do I know that? No.
Well, we had a recent proposal about the DPW building that includes a lot of this.
this.
That-
The
that-
concrete stem walls, the bathrooms, the
And
heaters.
what I do is I anticipate that we're gonna give those, every
Yeah.
contractor what we have to date, and they can then put together their proposal.
So, yeah, obviously drainage, floor drain, electricity, plumbing,
Bathroom.
not necessarily.
I believe last
We
time
got that in the
the
other
architect was here, I
We could
think
add-
that was required.
That would go down. We had to have it. We've got another building here where there will be a restroom. This is basically just to house the equipment so that we can maintain it properly. We get trucks in there, preferably a ceiling high enough so we can at least raise the box a little bit, hose them out when we're done, get underneath them, work on them, and,
Okay,
hopefully-
tell us the minimum ceiling height, please.
I don't know that offhand, I couldn't give you that offhand.
Well, it can be at least 14.
Well, you're gonna have 12-foot doors coming in, so the ceiling's gonna be higher than 12.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily have to get them all the way up in here. It would be nice to get them up all the way up in here. I can get you height on that, I don't have that.
My feeling and experience on some of that is if you say you can only go part way, somebody's gonna go all the way and they're gonna end up having a higher roof than you want.
Skylight.
So, I mean, I think
Half a door.
there's gotta be some fail-safe thing involved in there to keep that from happening.
If you work on them, are you gonna need a lift?
No,
'Cause the county
those
fleet's
kind of
got a
trucks are
lift to
too
work
big
on
for
their
a
trucks.
lift. Usually do.
Crawl under.
Well, I don't know where you're gonna do that much maintenance, a lot of times we send the trucks out, the fleet, anyway, to have the maintenance done. on
Well,
them.
I mean, you could do one bay that is high enough that that truck could go in and raise the box up for maintenance reasons. That could be your wash bay where you bring it in and clean it, whatever you wanna do.
You could put a pit in too, to drive over and work on the truck from underneath.
Yeah,
if
a
you
grease
wanted to
pit,
do that.
yeah.
Save a hoist.
The trucks are too big to go up on a hoist.
So to your point, Bob, one of Jerry's points on here says, the note, DPW might have to hire a mechanic. These are all things that we need to consider.
That's not for the.
There are all these
That's what
hidden-
we're talking about now, though.
And unforeseen expenses. And the other thing to keep in mind, and this has happened when Bob and I initially started the discussion about just a pole barn, remember that? A pole barn for the equipment, it very quickly morphs into something significantly larger. I think we had an initial price tag on that of what, 400,000? And after we had the architect come here and tell us what it had to have, what that building had to have, where were we? 1.5 million? Mission creep. So just something to keep in mind when you consider all of this.
Well, I think to be fair about the $1.5 million one though, that he was told to give us the best billing that you can possibly do, and we were gonna downgrade it from that point to the things that we wanted.
To my point, that never works, because they're always gonna stick
Well,
you
we
to the
never got a
ceiling and
chance to
scrape
see
you
if
off.
it would work, though, I remember, right, we got shot down right away.
The same thing happened with the electrical upgrades. We made a proposal with a defined scope, they did a walkthrough, and there was staff here, village staff, that tacked on all sorts of extra things and blew it up.
Okay, but this is the way we didn't get anything accomplished for the last 10 or 12 years. You know, I gotta be rude in that regard and say, we picked option 3, we're now working on the details of option 3. This isn't, we're not spending any money, we're not hiring a mechanic, we're trying to decide what would be the minimum, and what I would ask is that Chris type up these thoughts, and we bring it back to the next meeting, and we say, now this is what we're sending to the firms to say, put together a proposal. If you want this job to design this building and put it out to bid, you know, do your research and tell us what your price is. That's where we're going.
Yeah.
And we're gonna send it to as many firms as we can, and I have reason to believe we may not be sending it to certain ones, but, you know. That's a different story. So, is that fair enough? That's our game plan. What else do we need to know? I got, Chris, for you, because we're not on mics, although, Mr. Hahn is filming it. At least able to lift the box in one bay, if not all the bay, with a minimum ceiling height to accomplish that, right? That's what you're asking for. You wanna house, a maximum of 9 single axle trucks and a minimum of 5. Okay?
You're keeping all of the existing buildings, they need to know that, so they know where to put this, you know? You want it heated, drainage, so that we can wash the salt off, they need to know why we want the drainage, you know? And you want electricity, and you want water, but not necessarily restrooms. You need water to wash the trucks.
Correct.
Okay? What else do we need to know? Board, do you have other questions for Jerry? Jerry, anything else you wanna add?
As far as the building, no, not really. I'm just looking at something.
And we know that it's gotta have the required electrical and we gotta have this generator.
There may be some things that have to be added to it that are mandatory that I don't know. Like I
That's
said,
their job.
ventilation,
This
water,
is your input and the board's input, they'll come back and tell us if Mike's correct, if the recollection's correct, you gotta have a toilet. I don't know, they'll tell us, that's their job, that's what you're hiring them to do.
Fine.
Okay, board, anything else, any other questions?
Jerry, have you looked into, is there enough bays out there in this existing building?
Which building?
This building, where the fire department is right now?
Oh, yeah. We've already beat that. We've been through that. If, you guys choose what you wanna do. I mean, you could put up a fire department and all you would have to do out there is give you a key. I could drive right in. I'd have no problem. We've been through this.
Case in point, because right now you're talking, what you're talking right now for a building is way over.
Okay, are we gonna revisit whether we're going to option A, B, C, or D, or E? If we're gonna revisit that, then we gotta ask him, sit down, or revisit it, Mr. Trustee. We can argue, that's why you're still here 20 years later with no building, because we keep going back. Has anybody changed their mind based on what Jerry said, that we should not proceed with option B? You can continue to politic it all you like, but we get nowhere there. The board, are you still with that, three of you still on option B? Or should we let the trustee go ahead with trying to convince you to go with option A? That's what he's doing. That's fine, and that's your right, you know, to do that, but.
I know either way, it's gonna have to go out to referendum, because we don't have the money to do anything, because of the tax situation. So,
I'm not so sure about.
well, either way, we're gonna have to borrow, or it's gonna
Well,
have
we
to.
got a
go
borrow, but
referendum.
not necessarily a referendum. A would be a referendum.
But what I'm saying is, by the time he gets done with everything he's talking about right now, you're gonna be halfway there already anyway.
The referendum is 3 million.
You put all his trucks in there without doing anything,
Almost full. Just almost full.
you don't have to build a new DPW building. You're killing two birds with one stone.
Does anybody change their mind?
Well, it's nice to visit what you just said, I guess, Jerry, you know, to have, you know, one building that's already here, you know, but again, we have got nothing done the last 10 years, we've been trying to do things and we've been going around in circles, not getting accomplished anything, and the prices keep on jumping and so forth, but, yeah, the best thing would be option A, obviously, but everything would be good to go, but, I'm still good with option B, but to visit option A, like, trustee Buchholz says, you know, it's something to consider, at least think about anyway, if they can just move in and they're all ready to go.
You can't do all of them. You
But I
can't, you gotta do A or you gotta do B.
Well, that's like,
And that's why we're still here, cause we've done nothing.
I understand.
like John just explained to all of you.
Yep.
You're here tonight to pick one of those options, okay? That's what you guys need to do. I can sit up and tell you what I need, Andy can tell you what he needs and whatnot. All I know is for my department, I can tell you that a public works building will probably pay for itself over a period of years, just for what you'll save on the price of purchasing trucks and equipment. So that's my end of it.
Alright, so if we end up switching to A, you need nothing done to this building. to
Nothing
move
done in
something.
this building.
So when A talks about remodeling the existing fire department as a DPW, there's nothing you're gonna be expecting to be done in the building.
No, I could probably move right into it. The only
Well,
issue.
he needs the electrical upgrades, let's not
Well,
kid ourselves,
well,
you gotta
that's-
you gotta
that's
buy
it.
the
Yep.
generator and you gotta do the electrical
Yep.
upgrades or we can't open the garage.
The only issue I have is how
That's
many years is it
aggravating.
gonna take to do that? So how many more years are these trucks that are, the newest one being or the oldest one being a 2006, gonna be sitting outside there.
Alright,
And
so,
now we're gonna have to start upgrading trucks, I mean,
This is my problem with option A. If we go ahead with option A, it goes to referendum, and the earliest we can probably get it on a referendum, if we're lucky, is next fall. If it passes, then we go through the whole deal of getting the plans done and everything. We're looking 4 years down the road before you'll ever get a new firehouse built. So like Jerry's just saying, he's gonna be still sitting outside or fixing trucks on the pavement out there when it's 20
You're
degrees.
retired.
no, I won't be
That's-
doing it. In 4 years, I won't be doing that.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm just making a point though, is that 4 years down the road, we're not gonna be,
And your trucks are gonna deteriorate.
we'll be
to
buying
the
new
point
trucks
where
before
they're-
that again,
they're
to
not worth
replace the
anything
ones that are
anymore.
falling apart.
can the building that we have now as a fire department house everything if we were to do the upgraded version where you need 9 bays? So if we go to the point of having to do all of the snow plowing internally and no longer hire workmen or anybody else, and we buy extra trucks, you have enough space in the current
Outside
existing
matters,
building
The public has a right to hear, I'm
to
sorry.
put all that in there.
Yeah, I'd probably get them all in there.
So you wouldn't need an additional expansion if we built the fire department to house all of the equipment, including expansion of the DPW to take all of the snow out.
No, I could get them in there. You know, but I'd get them in there.
So you're saying you can get them all in the
You got how many
DPW?
bays, how many doors you got down there still? 6?
There's 6 down below and 2
Yeah, I
above.
guess there's 6 right there.
The up above is
I
dual
probably
wide,
get 2 up on top.
that's dual wide.
Yeah, it'll be tight. I could probably only get, I don't think I get 3 on top. Those things are pretty long. So it'd be tight, I'd probably get 8 comfortably, because the other bay is useless. We got your little trailer and stuff, I would just squat car could maybe go in there, but it'd be tight.
But you still have the building out back, you still already.
Yeah, I can still get a couple in there, yeah, you're right.
So if there's 8 here, that actually gives you 10 then.
Yeah, you could probably make something happen.
The reason I'm asking this, cause I guess to what Stu's bringing up, and I'm not saying I'm switching my thoughts on it, but if we keep adding more and more stalls, we're only talking 6 stalls for the fire department. And so there's a difference in the number of stalls that way, but the fire department side sways towards the much more expensive route because there's not just sleeping quarters, but there's this 80-person, training room, a full kitchen, the gym, and all the other things that way. So the reason I'm bringing this up, I guess, start thinking through the next step is, we just talked to Jerry, when Jerry sits down, then me and Andy come back up to explain what the fire department needs. And we may find ourselves in the point of having to build A anyways, because we're gonna do so much damn work to this building, that it puts us into the A category anyways. So I'm not,
Wait, I'm lost. You said that we'd have to put that much money in this building? How, I thought we didn't have to do anything in this building
if,
if we do A.
so if with B, right, we're talking about now building is something is spec-wise from what she's writing down. If we have to expand the DPW to take all the routes, we're talking a building with at least 9 bays in it, plus whatever else that ends up being part of the specs that we just written down, right? So that's gonna be a very expensive building to start with, cause it's huge, right? The next step in the equation for B is to have Andy come up here and explain what he needs to have done to the existing structure to meet the remodeling, to do what we need to do for the fire department. So at some point, there may be a cost analysis that it actually leads to being cheaper to do a new fire station, because we're gonna add on a building for sleeping quarters, and the next thing, to the point where now the remodeling just becomes that much bigger for the existing fire department, and then it gets to the point of like, well, why don't we just build a new one then, to Stu's point, right? And
Right. I mean,
so that's why I
anybody-
say, I think we need to see what Andy wants to say as far as the fire department goes, in what we're doing with Jerry right now, to get this, to divide the scope of the work. So what's the next step on the fire department side? Because we may find ourselves in A anyways.
I guess a lot of it's gonna come down to what A's cost is gonna be when we put it together, you know, for a new firehouse.
Well,
Because
but
like you
that's
said
what-
before, you know, we had a price of what, 6 million originally, kinda, and
Somewhere in the
6 and
6 to 7 plus pavement, cause that wasn't in their factor, so.
so we may be up
Probably
to 8 at least.
Yeah. But we're not necessarily that far off if we keep adding more and more to the B's project.
And I know some building construction people that, and Al might even be able to vouch for this. It's cheaper to build new than it is to build add on. Sometimes you're better off just to knock something down and start over, instead of trying to add on to it.
Sometimes, yeah.
So I think, not to say we're changing votes on A or B, we just need to find out what the scope of the fire department side of it is, to be able to make a more educated decision at that point. If they're gonna stay with B, what do we need to add on to it?
What we need to add on to B, to mean add on to the existing fire station to meet the requirements?
Well, all we're talking about tonight is choosing one option to study and move forward. And if you select option B and study it, you might end up arriving at the conclusion you're talking about anyhow. So once you get some free proposals and free bids and see.
Well, that's true, this is not,
So-
we're not committed, like John said in the beginning, we're not spending any money here tonight, we're just getting information.
If your goal is to move it
And
forward,
because we choose option B doesn't mean
right?
that we're gonna do option B.
If your goal is to move
This
it
is
forward,
just
you
purely,
should stay on your horse and.
this is the move forward and get information, and do we wanna use option B as the thing we're gonna start with?
Right,
That's always great.
I still say B, but I guess that's why I'm saying out loud those things, so that we may find ourselves.
Well, we may, and that would be a
Well,
good
I
thing.
bring it up because the attorney was saying, you know, everything's gonna change the vote. So I still say we go with B, like we're talking about, but now we gotta just figure out what Andy needs for the fire department.
Well, that's what, yeah, that's what we would do with a builder. I would
Are we
assume.
ready to move
Should-
on?
Yeah, you should lock it in before you.
I'm ready to move on. We picked option B to explore and get,
No, invite Andy up here to.
you wanna do that now?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's the
Andy,
next
come on
step.
up, what do
That's
you think
where
you're gonna
we're at.
need if we put an addition on?
We talked about putting sleeping quarters on. I don't know.
Well, I kinda know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that'd been the easiest to be pull up the specs that we did in 2015. You know, we had sleeping quarters, we've asked for 8 dorms the whole time. A lot of that is, you know, we have these big storms that if the whole crew doesn't wanna be driving in to respond to calls in slippery conditions, they have a place to stay. So that's why I've always landed on 8 dorms. In addition, we were talking about 2-story, options because, you know, you can save a little bit with the stacking and versus horizontal and with the space that we have. We still need to add some storage locations. And then there'd still be a kitchen and a day room. We'd have 1 or 2 report offices over there, or at least one for like the officers, so they can do their reports. Like I said, we talked about extending, 1 or 2 of the bays, right next to where the addition would go, so we could have the growth. I mean, that's a nutshell. It'd still be nice to put a fitness center in there, because we talked about that, you know, we're paying for the membership now. If we bring it in-house, one, that brings the people in-house, and then we also save the money from the annual subscription. So that would be a cost that we'd like to still see continue to be evolved. Like I said, it'd be easier to just pull up what we had in 2015, because that was the bare minimums. When we were talking about the separate station, that's where we're saying, hey, let's bring in this other stuff, so everything that we need is in-house. You know, if we get an addition, yeah, we're still fighting for room up here if we need to do stuff. You know, so, I guess from the bare minimums, you know, that's the stuff that we're asking for. And that's what we came to a conclusion with in 15.
So basically, the 15 one is still kind of what we need here.
Essentially, yeah.
Well, the board's gonna decide that.
Yeah.
We're just asking for the chief for input. You gotta decide if you really wanna include the fitness center. You know, you gotta have the kitchen, you gotta have the day room. They gotta decide that. Because we didn't go ahead with the 2015 plan, there must be a reason. It had to have been the money. So, hey, I just gotta tell the board that, you know. So, all right, any questions for the chief?
So I guess I wrote everything down there, so he said 8 dorms, additional storage room, expand 1 or 2 bays for the future larger engines, a kitchen, a day room, and a fitness center. Did I miss it all?
And then there'll be
Office?
one office down there for, aspects. And that was, I think that was gonna serve as a dual purpose, so if the dorms were upstairs, that office could be a dorm as well and meet ADA requirements.
Well, do you need an elevator then? I mean, if you go with the two-story, that's usually a lot of additional cost.
Well, I think that's where if we had that office serve as a bedroom too, I think, because there's a first floor option. So,
Probably the builder would, or the architect would decide whether we had to have it again.
like I said, that's what we did from in 15, you know, there's always options to look at keeping it on one floor, but that's up to you guys.
Any questions for the chief? Next, chief, so the board's gotta decide. How many times did we have a storm that you needed 8 bedrooms? This year?
What's that?
None? No, I'm asking the board, how many, how many storms resulted in this winter season, which I know is an anomaly? Did we have a storm where we needed 8 would have needed 8 dorm rooms? None, I assume, maybe one. That one big storm we had for,
Doesn't matter for a storm. The duty crews would stay here at night.
no, he said he wants 8 because of the storms. He didn't want 8 because of the duty crews, he wanted 8 because of the storms. Stu, that's what he said, I wrote it down.
Well, the duty crews are about 7 to 8 people.
I understand, but, alright, I won't say it again.
No, I know what you're saying.
You have to decide what's a want and what's a wish. Jerry was down to the bare bones. If you wanna put all my trucks inside, this is what I need. And that building's gotta have plumbing to wash them, that building's gotta have electricity to have lights, you know, and, you know, I gotta keep all the, I don't know the 2015 plan. I don't know that I was here, probably not. I don't know if that was a wish plan or that was a absolute necessary bare bones plan. I don't know that. You have to decide that, the 5 of you. He's made his pitch.
How many guys or personnel do you guys house at night, say a night crew, that you need here at night? What kind of room do you need?
Our night
For a
crew-
bare minimum.
Our night crews range from 6 to 8 people, depending on how many staff we have, you know.
Staying pat at the max. Staying pat at the maximum. So I know, that Bob, when you and I had talked, and across the board as well, the emphasis really kind of pivoted towards EMT services. So to staff every night with 6 or 7 people, there has to be additional labor costs involved to have people, right?
No, they're already anyway.
But are they
Right
on
now,
call
they're
or
paid
are they
on
here?
call.
So are we going into the staffing models now, or are we going into the building?
Well, I think the two tie together, because if you have sleeping quarters, so now you've got staff here.
But I think if you have people like you said before, like out of the area, like say Milwaukee, and they will stay here just for the sake of having a place to stay. There's not gonna be, and they're still just paid on call anyway, right? Am I mistaken on that?
No, that's correct.
Yeah.
So-
we really wouldn't have any full-time
So to be
costs, so
clear,
to speak, for a full-time employee being here.
so to be clear,
I don't know,
If
that's what
you tell them they're here, you gotta pay them.
Well,
Right,
they are.
this is my
on a per call
point.
basis. though.
No,
Not
they're
if-
staying here and you gave them 8 rooms and they're staying
Well,
here, they
that's
get
not call.
paid.
They are getting paid.
this is my point right here.
That's what I meant, is that
So they are getting paid.
they are getting paid if they're staying here, right, Andy?
Right now, our members receive a stipend for being on call. Other ways things have been worked through is, you know, departments have sleeping quarters, and they offer their members a place to stay if they're outside the area. So we would still have potentially some members coming from home, but then there would be some members that would elect to stay here.
It's a voluntary thing, we're not forcing this to overnight.
Right.
Well, I think there was some misunderstanding then on some of the board members' parts that we were gonna be paying full-time employees.
They don't.
No,
they're
they-
always
Well, I
paid.
just, I know what you're saying, Stu, cause you know it, but there's some people that didn't understand that.
Well, we
That's
got
why I
to
was
the
trying to
point where
clarify that.
if we wanted to say, hey, we wanna have an ambulance staffed here all the time, then yes, we do look into adding cost, because now you're adding 2 people. So that's where you guys would also have to make the decision, like, hey, do we wanna keep it on a voluntary basis? Or do we wanna have people staffing that ambulance 24/7? Now, again, it doesn't necessarily have to be full-time, but they could be part-time. And there's other options of how to pay that versus the full hourly wage versus a reduced wage at night, but then they go up to their hourly wage. So there's a lot more factors that go into that aspect based on the wants that you guys would like to see.
Okay,
Question for the board is whether you wanna go with the 2015 specs as outlined or something different. And this is just what you're sending to the contractors to have them put together proposals.
If I remember right, the 2015 specs are pretty much what you just asked for, aren't they, Eddie?
Yeah, that's why this.
Yeah.
That's what he said, that's
Right,
what I just
okay.
said. Yeah, you're going with the 2015 specs
Yep.
or something obviously less. I don't think anybody's asking for anything more than the 2015 specs.
I think the only thing more, I don't remember if the fitness room was in the 15, or if that, whenever they had the drawings, if that got.
Could you explain why we need a fitness center when we have Planet Fitness right there and there are other locations? It's difficult for me to understand why it would be less expensive or more efficient for us to buy and maintain that equipment and have the real estate and.
Because right now we pay an annual fee to Planet Fitness to keep our members in shape, to stay in line with NFPA regulations and everything like that. So essentially, you know, I think it's about $4,000 a year. You know, if we bring it in-house and have that equipment in-house, you know, if you were to spend upwards of $10,000 on equipment, that's paid off in 3 years, and now after that, we're recouping it. So we wouldn't maintain the Planet Fitness, it would all just be in-house.
Well, that equipment needs to be replaced, maintained, stored, you need the space, you gotta heat and cool that, and everything as well, and that assumes that everybody's using it.
Right, and they're more apt to use it if they're here.
Versus 2 minutes down the road.
Well, it's 5, it's actually 6
Okay, 5.
because it's past my house, so.
It's a convenience thing, so it probably would have a higher usage from that perspective, cause you're already here, they're working out, they're playing basketball, they're doing whatever they're doing, when there's not a call coming in.
Just when we decide these things, you need to keep in mind the cost of money to do it, cause it's all gonna be borrowed.
Right, and it's
So-
not gonna be $10,000 to be in a fitness room, cause one commercial treadmill's like $3,000.
And then you have to replace the equipment. So, just things to consider.
What are we gonna do, John?
Well, you just need to go down and say, are you going with the 2015 specs, which is 8 rooms, 2-story, storage room, kitchen, day room, 1 office that also serves as a bedroom to meet the ADA, and extend at least 1 bay, and plus a fitness center. That's all you gotta decide.
I'd vote for the 2015 proposal. Might as well start there.
What if it doesn't have the fitness center?
You can just include what they've already got. I think that's a good place to start, as long as it encompasses what the chief just mentioned.
What, he said the 15 specs is everything except for he doesn't know of the fitness center. So you want the fitness center, you want the 2015 plus fitness center if the fitness center isn't in the 2015? That's the question.
My vote is no, just use the 2015 proposal as is.
I'm gonna go down the line again here, Chad.
Let's start with Evan instead.
All right, we can do that too.
Start with that,
Go ahead, Stu, you're.
start with that,
What's that?
start with that, that'd be good, start with the
Yeah,
2015.
15
But I
plus
mean, do you want
fitness
the
or no
fitness center?
fitness?
That's what the question is. You wanna include that, cause it's not really in the 2015 proposal from what I understand.
I think it wouldn't hurt to have it in-house, but
Yes or no?
yes.
Yes? Mike's no? And I guess at this point, I'd say yes, just for the sake of conversation and to move on. We can always say no later on if it costs a ridiculous amount of money, but it doesn't make any sense, so.
That's much harder to do than, but
I'm saying yes though.
I'm gonna say yes.
That's three.
I'll abstain, cause you already got three. No, it's more convenient, but I feel like it's gonna be a lot more expensive. It takes several years to set this plan to come up with that same place. Add it in there, you already said yes.
Well, when it's up for discussion, you know, you can change our minds too, yeah.
It's not gonna be 10 grand, unless you get one of those multi-use, what do they call them, where it's all like, all in one, and then a treadmill, it's like two things in there.
One treadmill, one weight machine.
And one elliptical
And one, there you go.
So you're over 10 grand.
In a closet with a bare bulb.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what you have.
There you go.
And bullets.
Yep, there you go.
So, I just throw that out there, it's not gonna be 10 grand to put all that for later. Cause I know what we spent just on what we put in to remodel the one in my department.
Yeah.
And that was just adding a few things, just not replacing everything.
So what is realistic?
So you probably $3,000 to $5,000 per item, for commercial equipment, not the stuff you're
So
gonna buy.
you're looking at 20 grand, or are you looking, thinking?
What's that?
Looking about 20,000.
Probably.
Yeah.
If you're gonna get what I'll call bare bones that way, you know, cause you're then gonna talk dumbbells and free weights and all that kind of stuff too, so when you add all that together, I'm not saying you're gonna do it, I'm just saying it's gonna be more than 10 grand.
There's a question, so,
Cause I think we bought one of those, what's the popular name of treadmills that you subscribe to?
Peloton?
Yeah, like, there's one like that, I think we put in by us, and it was like 3,500 just for a treadmill.
So if you have a firefighter, we have the gym on site, firefighter's working out, he gets hurt, now what? That's our liability instead of a gym's.
Well, I think the biggest expense, and this is where I was going, Mr. President, if the fitness center isn't in the 2015 plan, they're gonna have to totally redesign the 2015 plan footage-wise, square footage-wise and everything. That's why I said we're not just talking about the equipment, we're talking about square footage to put a fitness center in if it's not in there. So taking the 2015 plan, if it's in there, it's in there, I wish we knew. If it's not in there, it's not in there, and you know, I'm just concerned that if you're trying to save costs by saying we're gonna take the 2015 specs, which we will bring you as a staff to the next meeting, you know, but I think that changes, it theoretically could change the footprint, is the point I was
I see
making.
what you're saying.
That's gonna be a totally different
I'll
cost.
stick my neck out and say it's not in there.
It's not in there. Okay, you got it. Okay, that's good, thank you.
Well, I'm kind of on the fence here now, it's the cost of the.
No, I am too, Bob, I'll admit it
If it's
myself.
just for discussion only, can't we just,
No, it's
Yeah,
gonna
we
be to
do
go
that.
ahead with the plan here, how we're gonna
They're gonna
do this.
redesign it.
Redesign it or not. We have to give them that specs. And if it's not in there, then it's gonna change like John said, the square footage of it, theoretically, okay.
Which isn't necessarily bad, I mean, to Stu's point, if you want it, if you think it's a necessary minimum thing that you need, then you bite the bullet and you say, fine, tell them to put it in there, design it in there.
Well, the only reason I said to do it is because I think we're gonna get up to the cost of this addition, and that's not gonna be a high-priced item, and if it's, I think for the morale of the department, I think it might be a good thing. So I'm gonna stick with it, say yes, yeah. So we got 3-4 of that, right?
I don't know, I don't think Al's changed his mind, so.
We stand.
Okay, so the staff is going to be directed to bring back to the March 14th meeting to keep this moving, unless you want it on the 28th, that's the next decision you have to make. The minimum, the specs, we won't call them minimum, the specs for the DPW, which is just this summary of what you discussed, a summary of what you discussed for the remodel of the fire department building. a summary of the electrical work that has to be done, the generator and whatever else was in it. And then you're gonna say, yes, that's what we want sent out to the firms to come back with a proposal on what it would cost to have them, you know, finalize these ideas, you know, upgrade, finalize, whatever the word is, and what their cost is to put it out to, do we wanna probably put it out to bid also, the cost, not to put it out to bid, but the cost of putting it out to bid. And they'll make their pitch, you'll narrow it down and you'll interview those, and then you'll hire you'll hire them to do that.
Did you include the electrical?
I did, I just said,
Okay,
that's the
do we
third
need
aspect.
do we need to look at the scope of that?
Yes, we have to bring that in at their next meeting, so maybe we should say the 28th, just because this will take longer, we don't do these at planning commission unless we have to.
Do we need to define the scope of the electrical project?
Yes,
We're gonna do that now, but later?
well, we already have done that several times,
Well, right.
and it got crazy because they didn't, I think,
Well, they-
Bob knows what the minimum that needs to be done, but talking to Jerry and talking to,
Right, that's
what the
I'm-
minimum needs to be, we're not doing all the stuff that they came in with. We want a generator. And whatever electrical has to be done in order to make the generators work under option B. I don't know if there were other things, there was all kinds of electrical things involved. Are the rest of them needed? Does anyone know?
No, part of it was to having the overheads put underground, which
Right.
we took out. I think, I'm not sure though, did this include the new firehouse with electrical or not? In the
No.
future, it was just for this
No,
building,
just for this
No, that'll
building,
have
and then
its
we
own.
added on that
And-
building.
and the building,
And that
yeah,
building.
which I think we decided we don't even need to do that. So that,
I have the impression you want a generator, and
We do.
whatever electrical has to be for the generator, and the generator has to be just for the fire station or for both the
for
fire
this
station?
build, the village hall and the fire station.
Okay. That's the electrical component, Chris. Great question, but that's the electrical component. And we're gonna type up something before we have staff meeting between now and then. We'll bring in a proposal. And is the 28th okay with everybody instead of the 14th?
Are you gonna be able to get all this done by then?
Sure.
Typing up these minutes and finding the 2015 plan and tacking, stapling that onto this summary sheet. Maybe we'll talk to Chris Janelli, will be at the staff meeting, he'll say, yeah, that's enough to go out for proposals.
Okay.
All we want is the bare minimum to go out for proposals. And you're gonna interview these people to make sure they understand what you want. That make sense?
Yes.
It's actually a 2017.
2017.
Okay, I
Perfect.
wrote 2015, I apologize if I wrote that.
2017 is what it's called?
2017, yeah.
Thank
I'm
you.
trying to
Well, I
find
think
it.
it started in 15, so.
Well, I don't.
All right, this is great discussion. I think we've moved the ball forward a little bit. Everyone's not happy, but at least we have a plan. Is any other comments on this agenda?
I'll just make one, and I know I was gonna thank you, whatever, but I'll go back to trustee Kukoc, you know, and I've done remodeling and sometimes, and I'll just put that out there, just for my opinion, so you can hear it from me, saying that remodeling sometimes costs more than you do if you build new, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, snow removal and ice control.